There are many interactions within a community. In this lecture, we're going to look at some adaptations to predation and look at competition. Be able to define predation, herbivory, mutualism, cryptic coloration, aposematic coloration, Batesian mimicry, and commensalism. Give examples of all of the above. Differentiate between fundamental and realized niches. If you have extra time, look at these slides provided on Moodle and you can define competitive exclusion, resource partitioning, and character displacement. This will be useful for later classes. Any two species in an ecosystem will have some type of interaction, and the relationships between those can affect the other's population. If deer are eating all of the dandelions, then there will be no dandelions for rabbits. This competition is negative for both because each population will negatively affect the other. Foxes, of course, will prey on the rabbits, which will help the fox population but have a negative effect on the rabbit population. Various parasites may affect the rabbits with a positive effect on these disease-causing organisms but a negative effect on the rabbits. And of course, the presence of rabbits is terrible for plants. It affects the rabbit population positively while having a negative effect on plants. Here is our interspecific interaction graph showing the pluses and the minuses and the zeros. Again, commensalism is when an organism exists and is benefited by the presence of another organism but does not harm or have a positive interaction with that organism. Think about mosses growing on big leaf maples. We're going to have a class activity. Let's look at some of these prey adaptations. So adaptations of prey to their predators. First off, safety in numbers. A whole number of zebras here are more capable of watching out for predators than a single zebra alone. So having many different eyes looking around, provided that those different eyes are going to each react, is going to decrease the likelihood that any one of the zebras will be taken by a predator. There's also something called predator satiation. This is most seen in cicadas. The percentage of cicadas killed by predators is related to the cicada density. What happens is as the cicada density increases, the organisms that prey on cicadas simply get full and cannot eat any more cicadas. And when they cannot eat any more cicadas, all the other cicadas are safe. So having more prey than the predator could possibly eat is also an adaptation to predation. Having a cyclical occurrence of these cicadas in 13 or 17-year cycles confounds predator life cycles so that the predators are never having the same bonus that the cicadas do. Consider back to optimal foraging, where a predator will benefit from having a larger prey, but may have a problem in costs of attacking such a larger prey. A cougar that attacks an adult human is likely to lose a tooth or two. A dinosaur of immense size can outgrow most of its predators and simply be too much food to attack and cause too much problems for that predator to attack. This is why toads will inflate themselves and turn themselves sideways when approached by a snake, because a snake cannot swallow a toad that is too large. The toad will want to convince a snake it is too large to swallow. This is a cost-benefit analysis of optimal foraging. There's, of course, hiding, and this is called cryptic coloration. So hiding in a location where the predator simply can't see you is one option, like this raccoon hiding in a stump, or of just having a cryptic coloration so that the predator, if visually oriented, cannot see you. It is also true that a lot of these caterpillars will not smell much for the predators, and their predators, which rely mostly on scent, will not be able to detect them. Hiding is an effective way of just avoiding predation. Chemical defenses cost more than hiding, but are also effective. Consider how a striped skunk is able to spray its predators and thus avoid attacks. Over time, the predators will learn through trial and error not to attack a skunk, and the skunks will be safe. Likewise, bombardier beetles spray their predators to prevent them from being eaten. Poison frogs are straight up toxic, and if they're toxic, then a predator will not benefit from eating them because the predator will die. And this leads us to something called aposematic coloration. This is having coloration that gives a warning. These poison dart frogs are Pretty easy to find in the rainforest if you are a visually oriented predator, but since they are so toxic, this is a warning. Gila monsters are venomous, and their toxins are a warning. They will fight back and they will bite back. Sea snakes likely are venomous and will be able to fight back if they are bitten. Fire-bellied toads are toxic as well. So having aposematic coloration shows that you are toxic and you do not want to be eaten. It is an advertisement to the predator. Of course, there are certain patterns that look very similar, and this is Mullerian mimicry or Batesian mimicry. In Mullerian mimicry, both patterns look the same, and both of these organisms are toxic or stinging or something like that. They have co-evolved to both look alike and give the same warning to the same potential predators. Batesian mimicry, on the other hand, has a toxic model and a non-toxic mimic. If a blue jay were to eat a monarch butterfly, it will begin vomiting, and it will learn not to eat things with that pattern. So the viceroy, which is non-toxic, will also be free of predation because the blue jay that ate the monarch learned that that target is not valid. However, if the blue jay eats the viceroy first, they will learn that the target is non-toxic and will attack monarchs more often. So this is continued selection. Monarch butterflies that look less like viceroys but are still colorful are going to not be eaten more often than monarchs that look just like viceroys but are still colorful. So these are a non-stable evolutionary interaction with a toxic model and a non-toxic mimic. Next, let's look into competition. So one of the examples in your body is simply yogurt. After getting an antibiotic, you will lose your bacteria, and that can cause a Candida albicans infection, which can occur either in the mouth or the vagina. After antibiotics, individuals are more likely to get these yeast infections because the normal bacteria in the mouth and vagina will prevent the attack from Candida albicans because they occupy that area and prevent Candida albicans from thriving. Eating yogurt directly after getting an antibiotic will restore some of these lactobacillus bacteria that normally live in the vagina, and this will prevent a vaginal yeast infection after taking an antibiotic because these yogurt bacteria will live in the area and will outcompete Candida albicans. So we can see competition is negative for both sides. They are both going to try to exclude one another, and that will reduce the population sizes. We don't often see competition directly occurring because often one side will lose, and when they lose, we don't see competition because it's already over. It comes down to the idea that only one can ultimately survive in a niche, something called competitive exclusion, covered on an extra slide on Moodle. Well, what's a niche? A niche is a range of conditions and resources occupied by and used by an organism. So certain food sizes, certain altitudes, certain climates, certain areas. This is used by an organism based on its organismal physiology. Two organisms can have very similar niches, and if they have the same niche, then they will be in competition. However, niches can also be very different by each species so as to avoid competition with nearby species. It's interesting that sometimes niches are specific to subspecies or even to sexes, where the different sexes may use different resources. So there are two types of niches we're going to look into, and those are fundamental and realized. A fundamental niche is the range of conditions and resources an organism could occupy and use. Everything that they could use in the absence of any potential competition. If competition does occur, organisms will often specialize in a certain level of their niche, and that will be the realized niche. In the presence of different finch species, you'll see that they will have realized niches eating only certain sizes of seeds. Geospiza filiginosa is going to eat the smallest seeds. Geospiza magnorostris will eat the largest seeds, and Geospiza fortis will eat medium seeds. In the absence of filiginosa and magnorostris, Geospiza fortis will have an expanded niche because its fundamental niche is larger than its realized niche when in the competition. So this means that we also see a good experiment of fundamental and realized niches in this barnacle experiment. We know that Thalamus is unable to live at the highest parts of the rocks because they will dry out. Thalamus is vulnerable to predation in the lower intertidal zone. So thalamus has a limited niche of the upper intertidal zone and the middle intertidal zone. This is its fundamental niche. In the presence of balanus, thalamus is excluded from the middle intertidal zone because balanus is a superior competitor to thalamus. Removing balanus will allow thalamus to expand into its fundamental niche of both upper intertidal and middle intertidal zones. But in the presence of balanus, thalamus only occupies its realized niche of the upper intertidal zone.